All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sebastian Pinto, and the topic I chose to talk about today is birthing rituals in other cultures. So let's go ahead and get started. So, what exactly are birthing rituals? You probably ask. So, many different cultures view the process of birthing in many different ways. A lot of them see it as a very spiritually significant event or something that is very, very crucial to their lives when welcoming a baby to the world. Uh, a lot of cultures do a lot of planning before. A lot of cultures do a lot of planning after a woman gives birth, and a lot of cultures do a little bit of both. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the slide. But that's basically what birthing rituals are. It's specific things that certain cultures do to help welcome a baby into the world. So let's go ahead and get started with birthing rituals in Christianity. A lot of people are already familiar with birthing, with how the whole baptism behind newborns works. It's very commonly known in the United States, and it basically involves taking your child to a church and meeting with a priest so that he can perform the baptism. This ritual is viewed as a way of cleansing the child post birth, and it helps symbolize the struggles that Jesus Christ faced during his time on earth. Um, During the baptism, the priest will actually begin by pouring holy water over the baby's head while reciting the Trinitarian invocation. The picture here on the right actually shows a baby being baptized in Christianity and/or Catholicism, which actually brings me to my next topic. Before I move on. There's a lot of similarities between Christianity and Catholicism, but they share some very small differences there. But I won't get too much into that. I really just want to focus on Christianity for this one. So let's move on to the next culture or the next religion, however you want to call it. Birthing rituals in Hinduism. So this is actually one of the few of the many religions out there. Well, there's a lot of religions out there that have many birthing rituals before and after birth, and they follow a timeline of a sort, in a sense, before the baby is born, before the woman is even pregnant with the baby, and even months after the baby is born. So let's start off with probably the first one. It's shortly after the Hindu couples wed. They'll perform a ceremony called Garbhadana. I think I said that right. I'm gonna ruin a lot of these names here. I'm gonna try to pronounce them the best I can. Uh, but anyways, going back, Garbhadana, which is basically the fulfillment of their parental obligations, and that basically means is that they have an expectation that they're going to continue the family legacy, move it forward, move the family name forward. So 3 months into pregnancy, there's a second ritual that gets performed, and that's called Punsavana. And that's performed to ensure that there is a strong physical growth of the child during pregnancy. This actually involves the woman who is pregnant to fast, bathe, and put on a new cloth, as well as look at the sun and offer respects to it. At the seventh month, a ritual called Simantanyana is performed, which is basically a baby shower, and everyone is familiar with baby showers. It's basically that, and there's really nothing more to talk about for that. So shortly after birth, Jata Karma is performed, and that actually involves feeding the child honey and whispering God's name in the child's ear, as well as a small prayer. If you look at the picture here on the left of the child having something poked into it looks like her ear, it's actually a ritual that actually gets performed, which involves piercing the child's ear with jewelry, as well as this same ritual. You also perform the first haircut, which I think they actually completely shave off the hair for the first haircut, which is actually a pretty interesting piece of information. They actually believe that the ear piercing ritual will help with acupuncture. So some other smaller rituals include a naming ceremony called Namakarna, where they choose a name for the baby. Nis Karmana, which is the child's first trip out, into the real world, going out, meeting new places. It's probably an experience for the baby, all these new things that it gets to see. And lastly, the Anaprasana, which is the child's first taste of solid food. No more baby powder for the baby. So, birthing rituals in Judaism. Now, a lot of people are familiar with circumcision, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that for Judaism. So this ritual actually occurs after birth, obviously, and it's actually taken directly from the Torah passage, Genesis 17. The ritual itself is actually formally known as the Brit Milah. I think I said that right. And the ritual is performed at the 8th day of the baby's life. It has to be at the 8th day, and I'll get to that here in a bit as to why. So this ritual involves the removing of foreskin from the penis, and that actual procedure is called circumcision. Now, the circumcision can either be performed by the father himself or a representative for the father. Now, the reason they follow these specific sets, why it has to be why it has to be at the 8th day, why it specifically has to be a circumcision, it's because it's, like I said before, taken directly from the Torah passage. And I'll go ahead and read you real quickly what the passage says, so you kind of get an idea that they actually are doing exactly as they said, as it said that they have to do it. So Genesis 17 reads, "Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and that shall be the sign of the covenant between me and you. At the age of 8 days, every male among you throughout the generations shall be circumcised, even the homeborn slave. An uncircumcised male has broken my covenant." So you can kind of see the heavy influence that this takes from that passage, because if they do not follow this ritual, they're basically breaking their covenant with God and not actually being baptized into Judaism. I don't know if baptized is a good word for this, but actually being welcomed into the religion of Judaism. Now, for women, obviously, circumcision can't be performed on that, so they actually have a different ritual, which apparently wasn't something they originally did before. And this one's called Brit Bat. And this actually includes that the child that's given birth, this can actually happen 8 days or later. It doesn't really matter. There really isn't a set date for it. And this is basically the child is given creative readings that are supposed to communicate what the hopes and dreams for the parents are for the child's future. All right, so moving on. So, birth rituals in Scientology. A lot of people will probably tell me that Scientology isn't really a religion. A lot of people will tell me that it is actually a cult. Some people will tell me it's a religion. I don't really have an opinion on that, but since we are following methods of birthing rituals, I thought it was kind of interesting to talk about how Scientology views them, because when you think of Scientology, you don't really think about certain birthing rituals that they may follow. So they actually have a specific birthing ritual that they do advocate very heavily for. And this process is actually called the silent birth or the quiet birth, whichever one you want to call it. So this was actually a procedure that was developed by the Scientology founder himself, Mr. L. Ron Hubbard. And this basically involves that everyone attending the birthing has to be as quiet as possible. So if you're in a hospital room and it's happening, any doctors or nurses present in the hospital room, if you have any family in the hospital room, or if the father's in the hospital room, they cannot say a word. The doctors cannot say words of encouragement to help get the baby born or anything like that. They have to be as silent as humanly possible. And the psychology behind that is that L. Ron Hubbard explains that it is actually beneficial for both the mother and the child, because it can help avoid any post-birth complications for the child and the mother's mental state. It's explained a little bit further that if children were to hear negativity while being born, it can actually cause permanent mental damage to the child, hence why they try to avoid as much as possible to say anything during the ritual, positive or negative. Pictured here on the left is my man Tom Cruise. If many of you are probably already aware that he is actually a active member of the Scientology community, and what I recently found out was that when his wife was giving birth to his daughter Suri, this was a long time ago, I think, they advocated for a silent birth. Whether or not they actually followed through with it, I have no idea. I don't really keep up with celebrities like that. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting piece of information, and it kind of lets you know, Tom Cruise is a Scientologist. Scientologist. All right. So in conclusion, birth is perceived in so many different ways throughout the globe, throughout cultures, throughout religions, whatever you want to say. But they all kind of have the same mentality when it comes to performing these rituals. So similarly across most religions, they view it as a very heavily spiritual experience. It's something that is very crucial to their beliefs and something that they believe should be performed for the child. And each have their own specific way of welcoming these new babies or new people into the world. These rituals are mainly performed for the health, with the health of the child in mind. Like Christianity does it so that they have God's protection through the baptism. Judaism, they make sure that they're following in line with the covenant of God that was given to them, from Genesis 17 in the Torah. And then you have Hinduism, that they're making sure that they're appeasing the gods, that their gods, and making sure that they're following through and making sure that each of these prayers and procedures and rituals are all met so that the child can be born the strongest physically and mentally possible. And then, of course, with Scientology, they have that in mind for the health of the child, to make sure that they avoid any sort of mental complications that the child could have by performing the silent birth. So, although not all religions agree with each other, it's very, very obvious that they all view birth as either a very, very sacred procedure or something that is a God-given opportunity that they cannot take lightly. So that is all I have. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.